Welcome back to WagerTalk.com. I'm Marco D'Angelo, joined by the boys Preston and Bryan. Guys, last Saturday night I was with Bryan. We were going to a concert, and prior to going to the concert, we were watching the Pittsburgh-Cincinnati game. And, and I sent out a tweet, as a Pittsburgh fan, I'm happy, and as a guy that had a very large wager on Cincinnati +3, I'm extremely happy there too. That was the perfect happy ending in Vegas for me. And everybody's talking about, we just said it in the last video about Seattle. Well, Seattle's lucky to be where they're at, and we're going to hear it all week about Pittsburgh's lucky because of the 30 yards of penalties. But guys, I bet Cincinnati, and you had them too, Bryan. We didn't have the right side in that game, in my opinion. Pittsburgh played a lot better than I expected them to play last week in Cincinnati. And if Ben Roethlisberger doesn't get hurt in the third quarter and the offense completely stops when Landry Jones comes in, Cincinnati doesn't have the chance to come back in the game, in my opinion.
Well, he wasn't gone that long. They brought him back at the end of an emergency situation. He was very fortunate to be able to get down there and keep that drive going. But it's tough to handicap this game. Obviously, the line, I don't even think there's a total on this thing yet. No. The line is out there at a few places, 6.5, 7, I believe. But without knowing at this point, which puts us in a tough position, we're handicapping this on a Wednesday, and at this point, we're pretty open. We don't know who's playing and how well they're going to be.
Here's what I'm seeing. Ben's going to play. If there's any way that he can get on the field, Ben's going to play. The question's going to be, are we going to see dink and dunk Ben that we saw on that final drive, which he literally, Mike Tomlin came to him on the sidelines. I mean, Landry Jones was so ineffective. We went back to a hurt Ben Roethlisberger and said, can you go back in? Ben said, I'll do the best I can, Coach. And they called one play that Ben signaled to the sideline, don't call that again. I can't throw the ball that far. And so it's going to be dink and dunk. But on the other side of the field, we're going to have a Peyton Manning. Is that what we're going to see out of Peyton, too? Because I know everybody's all happy Peyton returned and they won the final game of the season. But he only was 5 of 9 for like 60-some yards in that game. He didn't go downfield either.
I think that Roethlisberger throw you're referring to was like a 17, 18-yard post pattern over the middle. I mean, it wasn't even that far. Yeah. He had to gun it in because you're trying to split safeties or corners or whatever. But if he – how easy? I mean, Denver's defense is already the best in the NFL this year by far. If you go by opponent yards per play, it's like 4.4, and the next best is 4.9, which is a big gap. And now you have a guy that might not be able to throw it past 20 yards, and your run game's kind of questionable as is. I'm with you. I probably lean to the Denver side, but personally, I had this circle to fade Denver and Peyton Manning, who hasn't played in 3 months or whatever, 2.5 months anyway, just because of the rhythm, and at least in the first half or something. But now you have injuries to Antonio Brown, which we're probably going to get to anyway as well. And I'm not sure when they'll officially announce whether he can go or not with the concussion protocol. Might end up being like the morning of the game Sunday. It's tough to really bet going into this. I think the best value, and I'll almost guarantee, to be honest, I saw 39s offshore now today, by the way, for the total. If I can get a 20 or more on a first half under, I'm going to be on that almost certainly. So I think that's my play in this game.
Yeah, I agree. As soon as they put out a total and it's widely available, play it as soon as you can, because everybody's going to be thinking the same way we are. Mm-hmm. Unless, of course, Ben is out there before and they show it, and Brown is back and he's throwing for length, then it might change it. But other than that, how do you go? The Pittsburgh front seven has been really good as of late. Mm-hmm. It's the guys in the secondary. I thought Cincinnati would throw the ball downfield. They really didn't do it. And
the rain had a little bit to do with that. Surprisingly, and to be honest with you, when I saw the rain, betting Cincinnati, I felt better.
Yeah,
because
same thought.
Cincinnati can run the football better than Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh ran the ball surprisingly well last week with a third-string running back. The big injury, but no question Ben's a big factor. But our good friend Gil Alexander, I do his weekly podcast, Beating the Book, the NFL Megapod, he brought up a stat on Antonio Brown that even me, as a big Steeler guy, this blew my mind away. He has missed only 88 plays, 88 snaps over the last several years. In those 88 plays, the Steelers have only averaged 1.6 yards per play when he is not on the field, which tells me that this guy is as important to the Pittsburgh Steelers as we saw Gronk for the New England Patriots, because he is a receiver that's going to dictate coverages. And although the Steelers have a great wide receivers, they got one of the best sets of wide receivers in the league. The other guys are better because Antonio Brown's getting all the attention. If he's not on the field, then those great receivers, they're not as great. They're going to just become average. And that, I think, is the biggest injury here in this game.
Well, I will say that's probably because they're running the football more often. If they're going to attempt to throw the football, they want him in the game. But yeah, you're right. With him out there, it definitely opens up for the other receivers. If he can't play, do the rest of the Steelers, do they have that good of a wide receiver core to make the difference, especially with a quarterback that's
They can't throw 20 yards, and against the best defense in the NFL.
Here's something that, and I mentioned it on Gil's podcast this morning, I'm going to say it here. I haven't heard anybody mention this one yet. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be playing their 4th straight road game, and it's going to be their 5th in 6 weeks. Playing that many, and I know it's the playoffs and everything, but that is tough on any team in any situation. Now, compound the fact that the Steelers are banged up. They're, you're thin at different positions. You also played one of the most physical games I have ever seen last week against Cincinnati. Now, all of that is enough to make it a factor. Here's the last part of it. They're doing all of that. Now they have to go into Denver where you're playing in a high altitude where fatigue is usually a factor. That's going to magnify it.
It sounds like to me you're losing faith in your home team.
Maybe I'm doing a reverse jinx like last week you got.
It sounds like the Steelers are winning by 14.
Yeah, but it is something to consider, and I haven't heard anybody else talking about that situation.
I heard you talking about it even just last week for Cincy. It was 4 and 5 games or 3 straight road games, and so now you had another week in there. It's tough.
So, put a gun to your head with the injuries. You can't really.
I'd lean Denver on a side for sure.
Okay.
I can't go with the side, but I would say, and if we're not going to get a 40 or a 41, I like his under 20 in the first half. If you can get it.
This is the first one I'm going to do a cop-out. I'm on the fence here right now. Yes, that poor fence with me on it. We're going to wait and see, and I'll try to get all the information I can from everybody I know back in Pittsburgh and see what we can do, if we can have a play on it or not. But Brian says he leans with the under, and Preston says under first half in Denver if he had to play the side. So stay tuned later in the week for more updates on this one with the injury report. Check out all the videos at WagerTalk.com. And don't forget, every Tuesday at WagerTalk, it's $2 Tuesday. You get one best bet from one handicapper we feature that day for just $2. It's a great way to introduce yourself to the site or to a new capper. Check it out every Tuesday at WagerTalk.com.